Have you ever wanted to see behind the scenes of what a mediumship development journey might look like? A student of mine asked me to share exactly how my mediumship has developed and changed over time. Which clairs was I using when I first began? Which clairs are my dominant clairs now? In today's video, I'm so excited to take you on the journey that I took from the first time I realized I had mediumistic abilities to 18 months in. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the bell too if you'd like to be notified the next time that I release a new video about all things mediumship. I share recordings of my readings so you can see me in action, spiritual how-tos, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. When I look back on my mediumship journals, of which I have many, here's my first draft of my spirit dictionary. These are all of the journals that I filled in my first year of just documenting everything new that I was learning. And then here are my mediumship reading journals, where I documented the first 135 readings that I gave. Looking back at these, I realized just how much the way that I speak to spirit now has changed. So what I'm going to do is take you on a timeline with details of how my mediumship has worked along this timeline during the first 18 months of my development. October 28th, 2022. Now I know that's a specific date, but what you'll learn about me is that I am a very specific person, and I often remember the dates of important events in my life. On this date, I was watching an episode of Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop TV series. Laura Lynn Jackson was featured. She was giving a mediumistic reading, and I had a never before experienced experience of watching her give a reading. And I heard in my mind and felt a knowing that I know exactly how to do that. Immediately, I judged and criticized myself and felt embarrassed for imagining myself being able to do something anywhere comparable. It was just a moment that I experienced this feeling of knowing and hearing. So that would have been clairaudience and claircognizance. I also did experience a feeling of recognition, so that would have been clairsentience. It was early November when I started getting back into meditation after the birth of my daughter. And a lot of the time I would go in without expectation, which I've learned is a very good thing to do. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor in my bedroom with both of my hands up, resting on my knees. And I remember feeling a physical sensation of one of my grandmother's hands holding my left hand and one of my grandmother's hands holding my right. It was very subtle, but this was a powerful clairsentient moment for me. And then I experienced more clairsentience in the way of deep feelings of overwhelming love that caused me to burst into tears for quite some time. And I heard my grandmother telling me that she forgave me for not speaking to her the 7 years before she passed. Clearly, that clairaudience was strong and the clairsentience was strong as well. December 16th, 2022, a date I will never forget. The 2 months prior, October through December, had been me going through life, doing meditation, noticing things, having different experiences, but not sitting down with a sitter and testing my skills. I barely knew a woman that I'd run into at a mama meetup, and I heard that I should go ask her to come to my home and sit with me, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I made sure that I was really transparent about explaining to her that I'd been having experiences. I wondered if I had mediumistic skills. I wasn't sure what would happen, if I'd be accurate, if I'd get anything at all, but would she be willing to come and sit so that I could practice? And she said yes. So I always refer to this reading as my holy shit reading. She came to my house, we sat in the back room. I told her, just relax, I'm pretty sure nothing's gonna happen. After 30 minutes, I had given her a full-fledged reading of bringing through her grandmother and her aunt on her mother's side. I knew the timing that they had passed. I knew the way that they had passed. I knew end-of-life goodbyes. I knew personality characteristics. keepsakes, smells, and so much more. It was a full fledged, fully accurate reading. Both of us were in tears for many reasons, but I know that for me, that was an absolutely life changing moment. Now, what's interesting is that as soon as I went into giving readings, much of that reading was clairvoyant. I have heard this from other tutors that a lot of the time when students begin or when aspiring mediums are first getting into their skills, that they will spend a lot of time receiving impressions clairvoyantly. And I have found this to be true with my students as well that are in the more beginning stages, that clear seeing is most prevalent. Now, that doesn't mean that that's true for everyone, but for me, all of the keepsakes that I saw, all of the end of life goodbyes were clairvoyant. The timing of passing was claircognizant. There was definitely clairsentience in the message that I gave, especially from her aunt on her mother's side, saying that she had heard all of the end of life goodbyes. But almost all of that reading was clairvoyant. After my Holy Shit reading, I started doing research about where I could study that would be the absolute best place. In true Mel Pharr fashion, I thought that if I'm going to do this, I want to do it the absolute best that I can. I found Arthur Findlay College in a Google search as the best place in the world for mediums to go study, talked to my husband, and jumped on a plane not too much longer in January. So January 22nd, 2023 was the end of a 5-day period studying residentially at Arthur Findlay. I have to say that the most important aspect of me studying there was simply getting validation that what I was experiencing was real, receiving spiritual assessments for other mediums to say, yes, this is exactly what it feels like to be a medium. Yes, you're getting many accurate things. I was in a group of beginners and I felt that I was able to do a lot of advanced things really quickly. So that feeling of validation was the main thing that I experienced while I was at Arthur Findlay. I also feel that spirit wanted to wow me, to suck me in. And so while I was at Arthur Findlay, this was the first time that I felt I got a plethora of all kinds of very, very detailed evidence and accurately. The cause of passing for a spirit, the foods that they enjoyed, the scents that were in their house, the perfumes that they wore, injuries in specific places throughout the bodies, such as broken bones, metal hips, shoulder pain, disabilities that they had, addictions that they suffered from, keepsakes that were important, and powerful messages from the spirit to the sitter. One thing I also noticed at my time in Arthur Findlay was that I was seeing a lot of the detailed pieces of evidence I just mentioned clairvoyantly, but something that I excelled at from the very beginning that many beginners were always asking our tutors, teachers about was giving the message. This is how I knew that I thrived with clairaudience when I first was coming into my gifts. It didn't matter at any point in time on my journey, I've been able to give a solid, accurate message for the majority of my readings. And in the beginning, that message always came clairaudiently. I would hear the things that needed to be said. February 15th, 2023 was a wild experience for me. I was getting more than a dozen texts, emails, and calls a week. And one of them was from a woman who desperately wanted a reading and also wanted to see if I could come to her house about an hour away because there was spiritual activity. Of course, I couldn't say no. Even though paranormal investigation, now that I know more about it, is not my cup of tea, I still thought it would be fun to go to a haunted house. I went to her house, gave a full-blown reading. It was supposed to be for her, but her husband was in his office and we had to drag him out to speak to his grandparents about his mother who was going through health concerns. It was a powerful reading, and afterward, I followed her through the house. And at each different spot in the house, she would stand, and without telling me anything, I could clairvoyantly see and clairaudiently hear exactly the experience that they had had. For example, we walked into the entryway and we weren't moving, we were standing still, but I knew where the floorboard was that creaked. I saw the family coming in and out of the house, often getting used to the creak, and then I saw them all upstairs in their bed sleeping while they were hearing footsteps all around over these creeks. I also saw nearby that area and heard the door underneath the stairs. It was very much a Harry Potter situation, swinging open and then swinging shut. I knew that they could hear it while they slept. I could also see that the woman who had lived in the house stood there with a man in the night, watching the door open by itself and shut by itself, and even have the doorknob turned to secure the latch. We went through the house, so on and so forth. So this was an incredible experience for me to be able to walk through her house and know everything that had happened, again, clairvoyantly and clairaudiently. So these were my two strongest clairs in this first section of development. I was documenting everything at this time. This says First Mediumistic Journal 2022. I wrote down notes from Arthur Finley. I paged through these now and look at all the things that I've learned, and the things that were blowing my mind now that seem normal, I rarely question them. But during this time of development, as I've shared, it was all about clairvoyance and very much about clairaudience. What I will say is I was a hardcore symbols girl. Because I was seeing so much clairvoyantly, I started getting so many symbols that were helpful. In fact, here are two that I still use today. So you're going to be able to see this. When a spirit is passed, I see two little X's. And when a spirit is living, I see a smiley face. The way that I use this is a lot of times I'll sense that I am with a past spirit, but sometimes a past spirit will show me the image of a living person that they want to talk to or talk about. So when I sense a family member for my sitter, if it's not obvious, I will say, show me if you're past or if you're living, and I'll instantly get either the X through the eyes or I'll get a smiling face. And sometimes I ask 2 or 3 times to make sure that I understand. This is a really accurate symbol for me and something I used right away. Pearls used to be my symbol for grandmother. So I would see pearls because that's associated with my maternal grandmother. I never see pearls anymore. I just know claircognizantly that it's a grandmother. Overalls used to be my symbol for someone who was a labor worker. So they would show me a pair of overalls. Wheelchair is something I used a lot in my development, still use sometimes. If someone's sitting in a wheelchair, clairvoyantly for me, that means that they literally spent time in a wheelchair. If they show me a wheelchair with no one in it, that means that this person had a disability while they were living, and so on and so forth. This was that first spirit dictionary. So I was a symbols girl and loving it. It made it really efficient for me to convey ideas from the spirit to the sitter quickly. I also want to share that I often think as mediums that we are best at the things that we excel at in life. So I'm a people person, have a high EQ. So I understand relationships, family dynamics, communicating with humans quite well. And I believe that's why the message has always been an easier part for me, and why fleshing out the characteristics and the personality of someone has also come more easily to me as I've continued on in my mediumship development. It's a question for you to think about. What do you excel at in life, and how might that show up as a specialty or as a style of yours as a medium, as you uniquely come into your own way of practicing mediumship and using your clairsenses in a way that matches up with who you are. And that's the ultimate goal. I have so much more to tell you. In fact, going into March of 2023 is the first time that I became aware of mediumship development cycles. This was a rough time for me where I experienced my first major dip in my ability to give readings before I expanded again. So make sure to tune in for part 2 to hear more about my mediumship development journey. In the meantime, if you're interested in strengthening your clairs so you can speak to spirit, you can download my free guide below. It's called 3 Easy Exercises to Strengthen Your Clairs and Speak to Spirit. You can also check out my free training. It's called 3 Essential Practices to Strengthen Your Skills as a Medium, and both links are below in my video description. Check out mediumshipwithmel.com if you'd like to book a private reading, a group reading, a spiritual assessment, or if you'd like to learn right along with me in my development circle. Don't forget to check out this video next. And if you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you want, and ring that bell if you want to be notified the next time that I release a new video about all things mediumship.